The Alpha King needed a queen, not for love, but for control. So, he chose a human, the one thing his kind were forbidden to touch. But when she whispered her only condition, asterisk, "No one commands me, not even you," he didn't realize those words would break him and save them all. Stay till the end, because this is no ordinary love story. It's the curse that changed a kingdom. The obsidian hall of Valerian was not built for mortals. Every column shimmered faintly with runes that pulsed like veins of gold, carrying the living energy of the wolves who ruled there. The walls were lined with ancient banners, blood-red silk-stitched with silver moons, each marking a conquest or dynasty extinguished beneath the claws of the Dravic bloodline. And at the end of that long hall, upon a throne carved from volcanic glass, sat Kalen Dravic, Alpha King of the 12 Packs. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His very silence was a weapon sharpened by dominance. The courtiers and elders dared not breathe too loud in his presence, afraid the sound alone might displease him. The air hummed with his aura, that unearthly blend of forest and storm, of pine and iron, of danger caged behind discipline. Kalen's gaze, golden and unblinking, fixed upon the figure standing below the dais. A human woman. Her name was Ilara Wynn. She stood very still, the hem of her simple blue dress brushing the black marble floor, her hands clasped before her as though she were in a temple, not a court. Her heart beat fast. He could hear it, but she held herself with a composure that pricked his curiosity. Most humans trembled before him. Many fainted. Yet this one did not look away. The oracle's decree echoed in his mind, the same words that had haunted his sleep since the night they were spoken. To still the blood that stains your reign, the Alpha King must claim a mate of mortal blood. One untouched by the moon, one bound by choice, not fate. Kalen had scoffed when the prophecy was first uttered. A human as Luna? It was absurd. The Pax would revolt. The elders would call it blasphemy. And yet, the moon had fallen silent since his last war. His power, bound to her favor, was waning. So now, against every instinct carved into his soul, he stood to face the human who might save his throne. "Do you understand why you are here?" he asked finally. His voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder, low and steady, a sound that vibrated in the bones. Ilara met his gaze. "I was told the king requires a wife." A faint stir rippled through the council. The word wife sounded almost mocking in her mouth. Kalen rose from his throne and descended the steps one by one, his boots echoing on the marble. When he reached her, he stopped just close enough that she had to tilt her head to look up at him. "I require an alliance," he said softly. "The world believes peace is born of love. I intend to give them the illusion they crave." Her brow furrowed. "You mean a performance? Call it what you like." His lips curved, but there was no warmth in the expression. "You will play the part of my Luna, the devoted mate who tamed the Alpha King." He expected fear, outrage, or at least hesitation. Instead, Ilara tilted her head slightly, studying him with the calm of someone examining a puzzle rather than a predator. "And in return," she asked. "You will have protection," Kalen replied. "We will announce the bond before the Pax at the lunar gathering. Afterward, you'll live here, under my roof, under my name. No one will dare touch you." Her eyes flicked briefly toward the crowd of wolves watching from the edges of the room. The hatred in their faces was plain. To them, she was prey, an intruder. "And what happens when the play is over?" she asked. "When peace is secure, you will be free." A pause stretched between them, long enough for Kalen to hear the hitch in her breath, the brief tremor in her pulse. Then she said, "I'll do it." The words hit him harder than he expected. He'd prepared for resistance, for pleas or negotiation. But she agreed so easily, as if none of it mattered. His eyes narrowed. Just like that, Ilara's mouth quirked, not quite a smile, not quite defiance. "You seem surprised, Your Majesty. You need me. I need safety. It's a simple exchange." He circled her slowly, the way wolves circled before the claim. Every instinct testing her scent, her resolve, her fear. She didn't move. "You understand what it means to stand beside me?" His voice dropped to a low growl, intimate and threatening all at once. "Every pack will despise you. They will call you impurity, curse your blood, and plot to see you torn apart. They will obey me, but their hatred will find you." "Hatred I can survive," she said softly. "Chains I cannot." He stopped behind her, close enough that his breath stirred her hair. "You think you have a choice, little mortal?" "I do," she whispered. Then she turned to face him, eyes steady. "And I'll accept your proposal on one condition." The room seemed to hold its breath. The council stiffened. Even the flames along the walls bent toward them. Kaelin's head tilted slightly. "A condition?" "No one commands me," she said. The Alpha King's power flared, visible like heat in the air. Shadows trembled. Somewhere in the rafters, a raven screeched and fled. The aura of an ancient predator closed in around her. Wild, suffocating, absolute. Yet Alara didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her voice even as she repeated, "Not even you." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, to the shock of every wolf in the room, Kaelin Dravik, the unchallenged alpha of alphas, smiled. Slowly. "Very well, Alara win," he murmured, his eyes gleaming with something between fury and fascination. "Act like you're mine. But remember, those words will be tested." He turned, his cloak sweeping behind him like a spill of night. And as the great doors closed, the human who would break the Alpha King's fate stood alone in a hall built for monsters, wondering if she had just made a pact with salvation or with ruin. 3 days later, Alarion woke to the scent of rain. The sky hung low and bruised, thunder crawling along the horizon like an omen. Inside the palace walls, servants moved in silence, polishing marble floors, stringing white banners, and lighting hundreds of silver candles that filled the air with moonflower smoke. It was a day meant for celebration, but no one smiled. Because every wolf in the kingdom knew, the Alpha King was about to take a human as his Luna. Alara stood before the tall mirrors of the Queen's chamber, her reflection split into 1,000 versions of herself, each one more foreign than the last. She was draped in silver silk, a gown that shimmered like moonlight on water, its bodice threaded with faint runes that pulsed when she moved. Her hair, once left wild and free, had been braided with strands of platinum, the mark of Luna's favor. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the fabric at her shoulder. "It's strange," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "They dress me like a goddess, but I've never felt more like a sacrifice." From behind her came a chuckle, low, melodic, and distinctly amused. "You have a poet's tongue," said Rinvala's Kaelin's beta. Alara met his eyes in the mirror. He was leaning casually against the doorway, his uniform black and gold, the mark of command gleaming on his collar. Handsome in that dangerous way wolves always were, sharp eyes, sharp teeth, sharper loyalties. "I didn't hear you come in," she said. "You wouldn't. The king trains us to walk without sound." Rin pushed off the wall, stepping closer. "He also trains us to read fear." "Then you're wasting your time here." His brow lifted. "No fear." She shook her head slowly. "Just purpose." Rin studied her a moment longer, then smiled. Faint, impressed, almost pitying. "Purpose," he echoed. "You'll need more than that to survive what's coming." Before she could reply, the door swung open again. A cold gust swept through the chamber, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of pine and storm. The air shifted. Every torch flickered in reverence or fear. The Alpha King had arrived. Kaelin Dravik filled the doorway like a shadow cut from thunder. He wore ceremonial armor of black steel traced with silver veins, the kind forged only for rulers blessed by the moon. Across his shoulders rested a wolf pelt mantle, white as bone, its eyes set with faintly glowing amber stones. When he looked at Alara, the rest of the room vanished. "Leave us," he said to Rin, not taking his gaze off her. The beta hesitated, only for a heartbeat, then bowed and exited, shutting the door behind him. Alara turned to face the king. "You look ready for war." "In this kingdom," he said, voice low, "marriage is just another kind of battle." She arched an eyebrow. "And your weapon?" "You." He descended the short steps toward her, stopping close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his armor. His eyes traced the curve of her throat, the unmarked skin where, in true bonds, the mate's mark would rest. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his expression: curiosity, restraint, longing, maybe. "This ceremony is binding in the eyes of the Pax," he said. "When the moon rises, I'll take your hand before the elders. You'll speak the words I give you, and nothing else. You'll stand beside me until I release you." She nodded once. "Understood." He studied her in silence for a moment longer, as though searching for cracks in her composure. "You don't fear this," he said finally. "I fear what I can't control," she replied softly. "But you? You bleed like any man. I can understand that." A slow smile touched his lips, the first real one she'd seen. "Careful, little mortal. Understanding me is far more dangerous than fearing me." When the moon rose, the kingdom gathered. The grand hall was transformed, walls draped in silver banners, torches burning blue with wolfsbane flame. Every pack leader stood at attention, their eyes fixed on the dais where the Alpha King and his human bride-to-be awaited the oracle's blessing. Kalen extended his hand toward her. "Alara Wynn," he said, voice echoing through the hall. "Do you accept the bond of unity, forged in peace and bound by will?" Alara's pulse thundered in her ears. She looked at his hand, strong, calloused, waiting, and then up into those molten gold eyes. "I do," she said, clear and steady. The crowd murmured. A low, angry growl rippled through the wolves. Some turned away, some spat at the floor. But none dared to defy their king. Kalen clasped her hand, and the moment their skin met, the torches flared. The runes along the walls glowed bright silver, the moon's acknowledgement of the union. Alara felt warmth rush through her veins, like sunlight swallowed whole. A thread, invisible but real, connected her heartbeat to his. She gasped, instinctively trying to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to steady her. "Breathe," he murmured so only she could hear. And when she did, the world righted itself again, though something inside her had changed. When the oracle spoke the final words, Kalen leaned close, his breath brushing her ear. "Act like you're mine," he whispered. "For their sake." Her voice was steady, but her heart trembled as she replied, "I can act. But remember my condition." He smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of lips that promised storms. "Trust me," he said. "I haven't forgotten." Outside, thunder cracked the sky open like a warning. Inside, beneath the applause of wolves and the blessing of the moon, the Alpha King sealed his fate with a human's heartbeat. And though neither of them knew it yet, the bond forged in pretense would soon burn hotter than prophecy and more dangerous than war. The night after the ceremony was cold. Rain lashed the windows of Alarian's high keep, turning the torches into wavering halos. The celebration had long ended. The wolves had drunk themselves into a frenzy of songs and howls, but the Alpha King's chambers remained silent. Alara stood in the doorway, still wearing the silver gown, her fingers brushing the carved frame as if she could steady herself through touch alone. Before her stretched a vast room, far too large for any single being. The hearth burned low, painting the furs and stone with amber light. The scent of cedar, smoke, and storm lingered in the air. And there he was. Kalen Dravik sat near the fire, armor stripped away, wearing only a black shirt that clung to the shape of his shoulders. His hair was damp, his gaze fixed on the flames. He didn't rise when she entered. For a moment neither spoke. The silence was a living thing, tense, intimate, filled with all the unsaid truths that stood between them. Finally, Alara said quietly, "You didn't come to the feast." Kalen's eyes flicked toward her, gold glinting in the dim light. A king shouldn't have to drink with those who doubt him. She hesitated, then stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "They hate me," she said simply. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "They hate anything that reminds them their king can bleed." Alara moved toward the fire, every step measured. "And, do you?" He looked up. "Do I what?" "Hate me." For a heartbeat, the air changed, heavier, sharper. He rose to his feet, the movement fluid and predatory. "I don't hate you," he said, voice soft but dangerous. "I hate that I need you." Her breath caught. She should have looked away, but she couldn't. "You don't need me," she said. "You need what I represent." He took a step closer. "And what's that?" "Control," she whispered. Kaelin stopped, only inches from her now. She could feel the heat of his body, hear the low rumble of his breath. "You think this is about control?" "Everything about you is," she said. "Even the way you breathe feels deliberate." The corner of his mouth curved, not quite a smile. "You see too much, human. And you hide too much, wolf." Their gazes locked, a standoff of wills. The fire cracked beside them, and the silence thickened again. Then Kaelin turned away, breaking the spell. He walked to a small table, poured dark wine into 2 glasses, and handed one to her. "Drink," he said. "You'll need it to sleep here." Alara took the glass but didn't drink. "Because of you?" "Because of them." He nodded toward the tall windows. "The pack. They'll be restless tonight. Change stirs instincts they can't control. So I'm the enemy and the Luna all at once. Welcome to my world." She almost smiled, but the weight of his words settled deep. For all his power, she realized, he was trapped too, a prisoner of duty, of prophecy, of blood. He returned to the fire and said, "You'll stay here. This is the Luna's chamber now." Her heart skipped. "With you?" His gaze flicked to her, unreadable. "You wanted freedom. You'll find none in fear. The pack watches for weakness. If I send you elsewhere tonight, they'll scent it." Alara met his eyes. "Then I'll stay. But I won't share your bed." His jaw tightened, but he didn't protest. "I didn't ask you to." They stood there, the storm growling beyond the walls, the fire between them burning low. At last he said quietly, "You made a condition Alara win. No one commands you. Remember that when the cost comes due." She held his gaze. "I never make promises I can't keep." He nodded once, not in approval, but in acknowledgement, then turned away, his silhouette caught in firelight and shadow. When she finally lay on the far side of the massive bed, he remained by the hearth, silent, unmoving, watching the storm through the glass. And as thunder rolled across the valley, the human and the Alpha King drifted into uneasy sleep, 2 souls bound by pretense, haunted by truths neither could yet name. Outside, wolves howled to the moon, and somewhere deep within Kaelin Dravik's chest, the beast stirred, whispering a truth his mind refused to face. He didn't hate the human. He feared her. The next morning, dawn bled pale light through the storm clouds. The world outside the high windows of Alarion still dripped with rain. The courtyard glistened, and the scent of wet earth drifted through the cracks of the chamber. Alara woke to the low murmur of voices. 2 guards stood outside the door, their tones clipped, careful. She sat up slowly, feeling the faint warmth where the fire had burned out. Across the room, Kaelin was already awake. He stood shirtless before the window, the morning light carving his form into marble. He didn't turn when she moved, but he spoke. "You slept." Alara hesitated, then swung her legs over the bed. "Barely." He looked over his shoulder, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Better than I expected. Most humans don't rest easily with wolves in the room." She met his gaze evenly. "I stopped fearing monsters a long time ago." Kaelin studied her for a moment, searching her face, as if to test the truth in her words. Then he said, "Dress. The council meets at first bell." "Am I expected to attend?" "You are the Luna now." The words hung heavy. She nodded and rose, moving toward the carved wardrobe where servants had left new garments. As she touched the fabric, dark blue with silver thread, she caught sight of herself in the mirror again. The woman who stared back looked neither human nor wolf. Something else had settled in her eyes overnight, resolve sharpened into quiet fire. The council chamber was carved into the heart of the mountain, ancient stone walls laced with veins of silver. 12 seats curved in a semicircle around the Alpha's throne. When Alara entered beside Kaelin, the room fell silent. Dozens of golden eyes watched her, gleaming with thinly veiled hatred. An elder with a mane of white hair stood. "Majesty," he said carefully, "the pacts demand explanation. A mortal cannot bear the title of Luna. The bond is false." Kaelin's gaze was cold. "Do you doubt my word?" The elder faltered. "Not your word, my king. Only the will of the moon. The mark will come when it's time," Kaelin interrupted, his voice slicing through the air like steel. Another elder leaned forward, his tone dripping with contempt. "Forgive me, but she smells of fear, of mortality, of frailty. How long before the other alphas challenge your rule?" Alara's heart pounded, but she forced her voice steady. "Would you prefer endless war to the peace your king offers?" The room went utterly still. Every gaze turned on her. She felt the weight of their fury, the twitch of claws beneath gloves, the hunger for blood behind every polite sneer. Yet she didn't waver. Kaelin looked at her, not with anger, but something far more dangerous. Approval. "The mortal speaks true," he said, eyes still on her. "Any who wish to challenge the peace I built will face me, not her." A murmur rippled through the council, then silence again. The elders bowed, though their eyes still burned. When the meeting ended, Kaelin led her from the chamber. His steps were slow, measured, and she followed in silence until they reached the balcony overlooking the valley. Mist curled over the mountains. Below, the howls of the morning patrol echoed faintly. "You shouldn't have spoken," he said finally, without looking at her. Alara folded her arms. "You said I was Luna. Luna, speak." "That room was full of predators waiting for a reason to tear you apart. Then let them try." Kaelin turned to her, really turned this time. His eyes flared with light, fierce and golden. "Do you think bravery will protect you from them?"
"No," she said.
But silence never saved anyone either.
For a long moment he said nothing.
Then he exhaled, a sound more like a growl of reluctant amusement than breath. "You're either very foolish or very strong. Perhaps both." He stared at her, the faintest hint of a smile ghosting across his mouth, then looked away, as if afraid to let it linger. That night, the moon rose full and heavy over the peaks. Alara couldn't sleep. She walked the empty corridors, her bare feet whispering across cold stone. The palace felt alive, every sound amplified, every shadow deep. When she reached the balcony again, the wind lifted her hair. The moon hung enormous and white above the valley, its light washing everything in silver. "You shouldn't wander alone," came Kaelin's voice from behind her. She didn't turn. "You always appear when I least expect you." "I hear your heartbeat," he said simply, "even through walls." Alara smiled faintly. "Then you know I'm not afraid." He stepped beside her, his presence a quiet storm. They stood together in silence, the wind tangling between them. For the first time, he looked less like a king and more like a man haunted by something he couldn't name. "You asked me once if I hated you," he said at last. She glanced at him. "And I don't." He paused, then added softly, "But I should." The words struck deeper than she expected. She turned to him fully, the moonlight catching his eyes, bright gold, framed in shadow. "Then maybe you're more human than you think." For the first time since the ceremony, he smiled, not a weapon, but a quiet, unguarded thing. "Careful," he murmured, voice low as thunder. "If you keep saying things like that, I might start believing you." Their eyes held for a moment too long, and something dangerous flickered between them, something that neither the moon nor the crown could command. Then, from deep within the forest, a horn sounded, long and sharp. The sound of alarm. Kaelin's expression hardened instantly. "Stay here," he ordered, the softness gone. "What is it?" The whispering moon has spoken, he said grimly, and not all who hear it wish me alive. He vanished into the night, a blur of motion and shadow, leaving Alara alone beneath the watching stars, unaware that the prophecy that bound them had just begun to bleed. The night split open with chaos. From the balcony, Alara watched dark shapes move through the courtyard below, fast, coordinated, wolf-born. The alarm horns echoed again, followed by snarls and the clang of steel. Shadows leapt across the torches as guards rushed to the gates. Her heart hammered, but instinct overrode fear. She grabbed a cloak from the nearest chair and ran. The corridors of Alarion were labyrinthine, narrow stone halls winding through torchlight and echo. When she reached the main staircase, 2 guards blocked her path. "Luna," one said sharply, his voice tight with tension, "the king commanded you to remain in your chambers." Alara's voice was firm. "Then you'll escort me. I need to see him." The guards hesitated, uncertain. Then one, younger, with pale eyes, nodded. "Stay close." They moved quickly through the halls. The air grew thick with a metallic scent of blood. When they reached the courtyard, the scene unfolded like something from a nightmare. Bodies, wolf and man alike, littered the wet stone. The rain had begun again, washing crimson into black rivulets that ran between the cobbles. The gate was shattered. Beyond it, the forest loomed, and from its edge came a low, chilling howl. Alara. The sound of her name tore through the din. Kalen emerged from the smoke, blade in hand, his chest streaked with blood, though none of it looked like his. His eyes burned bright gold, his wolf close to the surface. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "You were attacked," she said. "I couldn't stay and do nothing." His jaw tightened, but before he could reply, one of the guards beside her stiffened. "Your Majesty." Too late. A blur shot from the shadows, fast, silent, deadly. Alara barely saw the glint of steel before instinct took over. She shoved the young guard aside, the dagger missing his throat by inches and burying itself in her shoulder. The pain was white-hot. The world spun. "Alara." Kalen's roar shook the air. He moved faster than thought, his blade flashing once, twice, and the assassin fell, throat opened, blood steaming in the cold rain. He was beside her in seconds, catching her as she staggered. "You're hurt," he growled. His hands pressed against the wound, heat radiating from his skin. "It's nothing," she gasped. "You were stabbed." His voice broke on the word, rage and fear twisting it raw. "You could have been." "I'm fine," she lied, even as darkness crept at the edge of her vision. "You need to." Her words faded. Her body trembled, then went still. When Alara woke again, she was no longer in the courtyard. She lay in Kalen's bed, the same vast chamber she'd refused to share days before. The scent of smoke and rain lingered in the air. Her shoulder burned, bandaged in clean white linen. Kalen sat beside her, still in blood-stained clothes. His eyes were fixed on the fire, but his posture was rigid, like a predator ready to strike. She stirred. "You should sleep." He looked at her sharply. "You should be dead." "I've been told that before." He leaned closer, his voice low. "The blade that struck you is laced with wolfsbane. Even touching it should have killed you. But your wound." He pulled the edge of the bandage back just enough to reveal smooth, nearly healed skin. "Closed within hours." Alara blinked. "That's not possible." "It shouldn't be," he said. "But it is." For a moment neither spoke. The only sound was the fire crackling, the storm fading beyond the windows. Then he said, almost to himself, "The oracle warned me. The one who saves your blood will carry her own secret." Alara frowned. "I'm not part of your prophecy." "You're part of something." His gaze pinned her, fierce and searching. "What are you, Alara?" "I'm human." "Humans don't survive wolfsbane." She looked away. "Then maybe your poison's losing its bite." He exhaled sharply, a sound caught between frustration and awe. "You saved my soldier tonight."
You saved me.
"Why?" "Because peace means nothing if the king dies." His hand caught her wrist before she could move. That's not an answer. Her pulse quickened beneath his grip. Maybe I don't owe you one. For a heartbeat, he held her there, the air thick with tension, their faces close enough for her to feel his breath. Then he released her, his voice softer. You don't. But I'll find it anyway. Later that night, when she drifted into uneasy sleep, Kalen remained by the fire, watching her. The storm had passed, but his thoughts raged on. He had seen many things in his lifetime: betrayal, prophecy, the cruelty of gods, but never a mortal who bled like a wolf and healed like one too. He looked at the faint glow of the mark that now shimmered beneath her bandages, silver, alive, pulsing faintly with the rhythm of her heart. The moon had marked her, not him. And in that silent revelation, the Alpha King understood what true fear was. Because whatever Alara Wynn was, human, divine, or something in between, she was no longer his pawn. She was his undoing. The rain had stopped, but Alarians did not rest. In the aftermath of the attack, the palace thrummed with unease. Wolves prowled the corridors, their eyes bright with suspicion. The servants spoke in whispers, glancing often toward the Luna's chamber. Rumors spread faster than smoke, that the human had survived wolfsbane, that her wound had sealed itself before the moon had fallen. By dawn, even the elders were afraid to speak her name. Kalen Dravik watched from the upper terrace as the mist lifted from the valley. His jaw was set, his hands gripping the stone railings so hard it cracked beneath his fingers. Below him, the pack assembled in silence, loyal, disciplined, and waiting for their king's word. He didn't address them. He didn't need to. His thoughts were elsewhere. The memory of Alara bleeding in his arms replayed, like a curse. The warmth of her blood, the strange light that had shimmered beneath her skin, the mark that had appeared overnight, a faint, silver crescent on her shoulder, alive and pulsing with power. No mortal bore a mark of the moon. No mortal should have survived that blade. And yet she had. In the great hall below, Alara sat alone at the long table, untouched food laid before her. Her shoulders still ached, though faintly now. She flexed her fingers, studying the strange light that lingered beneath her skin. It was faint, like moonlight trapped beneath glass. The door opened. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. You're supposed to be resting, Kalen said. She glanced at him. You're supposed to be ruling. He ignored the jab and took the seat across from her. You healed overnight, so you keep reminding me. It shouldn't be possible, she sighed, pushing her plate away. If you brought me here to interrogate me again, at least let me eat something decent first. His lips twitched, though his eyes stayed hard. You don't understand what this means. Then explain it. He hesitated, then leaned forward. The mark on your shoulder, that's the sign of the moon's blessing. No human has ever carried it, not even the old bloodlines. Whatever you are, Alara, the gods have touched you. I don't believe in gods, she said quietly. Then explain why one seems to believe in you. Her gaze dropped. Maybe it's a mistake. Nothing about the moon is accidental. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither dared to say. Finally, she asked, what happens now? Kalen rose. I'm going to the Oracle. To ask what I am, to ask what you're meant to be. The journey to the Oracle's sanctuary began that night. Kalen rode through the mountain pass with a small escort, Rin at his side, their cloaks whipped by cold wind. Majesty, Rin said after a long silence, the men whisper that the human is cursed, that the attack was punishment. And what do you think? Rin hesitated. I think she's not what she seems. Neither am I, Kalen said darkly. They reached the cliffs by dawn. The Oracle's temple stood carved into the rock face, ancient and silent. Blue fire burned in its torches, casting ghostly light across the stone. Inside, the air was thick with incense and whispers that weren't entirely mortal. The Oracle waited at the far end, a woman veiled in white, her eyes pale as frost. You come seeking truth, Alpha King, she said, her voice echoing like distant thunder. But truth often demands blood. Kalen stepped forward. Then take mine. The Oracle tilted her head.
Ah.
So you have found her.
His jaw clenched.
You knew this would happen. I knew the moon would send one who could break your chains, she said softly. And she has. She's human. She was. Kaelin froze. What do you mean? The oracle lifted her hand, and the torches flared white. In their light, images rippled through the air, visions of another time. A child born beneath a blood moon, crying in the arms of a mother who is not her own. A village consumed by fire. A symbol carved into flesh, the same crescent that now glowed beneath Alera's skin. She carries the blood of the forgotten, the oracle whispered. The half-born, neither human nor wolf, bound to both worlds. A daughter of the first moon's curse. Kaelin's breath caught. That blood was wiped out centuries ago. Or so your ancestors believed, said the oracle. But fate has a cruel memory. You were destined to find her, Kaelin Dravik, the one who can either save your reign or end it. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. If she is a threat, she is your balance, the oracle interrupted. Without her, the Alpha King dies. With her, the old order burns. Her gaze, pale and endless, locked on his. But beware, the bond you forged in falsehood now lives in truth. And truth demands more than loyalty. It demands surrender. That night, as Kaelin rode back to Alerion, her words followed him like ghosts. Without her you die. With her, the old order burns. He wasn't sure which fate terrified him more. When he returned to the palace, Alera was waiting at the gates, her silver eyes catching the torchlight. He dismounted slowly, unable to look away from her. Something in her scent had changed. Wilder, stronger, threaded with the same power he felt in his veins. What did the oracle say? She asked. Kaelin stepped closer, rain dripping from his cloak. She said the truth I didn't want to hear. And what's that? He stopped before her, his voice barely above a whisper. That you're not my weakness, he said. You're my fate. The storm had passed, but Alerion still felt bruised by its fury. Days blurred into nights filled with the scent of steel and smoke, the unease of wolves who no longer trusted their king. Rumors stalked the corridors now, rumors of a human who healed like a god and bore the moon's mark. Alera felt their stares when she walked through the great halls. She kept her chin high, though her pulse always betrayed her. The mark on her shoulder glowed faintly even in daylight, hidden beneath linen and silk, but she felt it constantly, a pulse not quite her own. At first it had been warmth. Now it burned. She told herself it was healing. She told herself it would fade. But each night, when the moonlight touched her skin, the mark shimmered, and she swore she could hear whispers, ancient words curling through her mind like smoke. Kaelin kept his distance after returning from the oracle. He threw himself into council meetings, border patrols, anything to avoid the pull that tethered him to her. But she felt him in the bond they both pretended not to believe in, the faint echo of his rage, his hunger, his loneliness. On the third night, she found him in the training yard, long past midnight. The air was cold, the ground slick with rain. He fought alone, moving through the forms of battle as if the motion could quiet something inside him. Sweat ran down his back, glinting silver under the moon. You're bleeding, she said quietly when he didn't notice her. Kaelin froze mid-strike. He turned, breath ragged, eyes burning. You shouldn't be here. You keep saying that, she replied, stepping closer. And yet here I am. He stared at her, the defiance in her eyes, the steadiness in her voice, and something inside him frayed. You don't understand what's happening to you, he said. That mark, it's changing you. I can feel that, she admitted. But I'm still me. For now. He threw his sword into the dirt. The moon's chosen aren't meant to survive long without surrendering to what they are. Alera crossed her arms. Then tell me what I am. He hesitated. The oracle called you half-born. The blood of both worlds, human and wolf. A child of the curse that started the first war. She blinked, her heart twisting. That's impossible. Is it? He asked softly. You heal like one of us. You smell of moonlight and blood. You can feel the pull of the pack, can't you? Alara opened her mouth to deny it, then stopped. Because she could feel it. The world had sharpened. Sounds carried farther. Scents lingered longer. Her heartbeat had learned the rhythm of theirs. What happens to me? She whispered. Kalen's expression darkened. You'll change. The moon doesn't bless, it claims. A long silence followed, broken only by the wind. Finally, she said, and if I refuse? He stepped closer until his shadow swallowed hers. Then you'll die. That night, the pain began. It started as heat crawling beneath her skin, spreading from her shoulder through her veins like wildfire. She woke gasping, the mark searing with light. Her body trembled, caught between two worlds tearing her apart. The whispering returned, ancient, melodic, cruel. Choose, daughter of dusk. Flesh or flame. Mortal or moon. She clutched her chest, half screaming. The sound brought Kalen running. He burst through the door, bare-chested, eyes glowing like a predator's. Alara. He crossed the room in 2 strides and caught her before she fell. Her skin was burning hot, her pupils wide. Make it stop, she gasped. Please make it stop. He pulled her against him, his arms locking around her trembling frame. Breathe. Listen to my voice. It hurts. I know. He pressed his forehead to hers, forcing his power through the bond. His aura flared, raw, wild, ancient. You're not alone. Do you hear me? You stay here. With me. The fire beneath her skin writhed, twisted, then, slowly, began to ebb. Her breathing steadied, though the glow beneath her mark lingered, dim but alive. When it was over, she sagged against him, tears streaking her cheeks. What was that? The awakening, he said softly. Your wolf is trying to find you. I don't want it. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. It doesn't care what you want. Their eyes met, her pain reflected in his own. The air between them shifted. The bond that had once felt like a chain now pulsed with something frighteningly tender. You shouldn't have come to me that night, he murmured. You should have let me stay your enemy. Maybe I don't believe in enemies, she whispered back. He closed his eyes, as if fighting something impossible. If you knew what I wanted right now, you'd run. Then tell me. Kalen's breath hitched. His hand tightened at her waist, his voice rough and low. I want to stop pretending you're only my Lunarin name. Silence. Her heartbeat quickened, and his followed it like a shadow. Then she said, then stop pretending. And the space between them vanished. Later, when the moon hid behind clouds, they sat together in the aftermath, his arm around her, her head resting against his chest. Neither spoke. Neither dared to call what had happened love. But deep in her blood, the mark pulsed like a living thing. And far beyond Alarian's walls, in the black forests where old gods slept, something ancient stirred, smiling, waiting, whispering through the wind. The Alpha and the Half-Born have met. The world will burn anew. The first light of dawn crept through the heavy curtains, gold bleeding into the blue of the chamber. The air still smelled faintly of rain, and of them. Of warmth, of wolf, of something both sacred and forbidden. Alara stirred beneath the sheets, the ache in her body strangely sweet. The mark on her shoulder no longer burned. It throbbed gently, like a second heartbeat. She should have felt fear. Instead, she felt a strange calm, a dangerous sense of belonging. When she looked to the window, she saw Kalen standing there again, as he always did after sleepless nights, shirtless, the scars of countless battles silver beneath the morning light. His shoulders were tense, his jaw set. She knew without asking that he regretted nothing, and that terrified him more than anything. You're brooding, she said softly. He didn't turn. I'm thinking. About what? How to keep you alive. Alara smiled faintly, though her throat tightened. You make it sound as if I'm already dying. You might be. That silenced her. Finally, he turned, his expression unreadable. The council knows. Someone saw us last night. The guards have been whispering since dawn. Her stomach dropped. What will they do? What they always do, Kaelin said bitterly. Try to control what they fear. By noon, the council had gathered. The great hall, usually filled with ritual solemnity, now burned with tension. Every elder's gaze was a blade, sharp and accusing. Alara entered beside Kaelin. The murmurs grew louder. She bears the mark. The moon favors her unnaturally. The prophecy warned of the half-born. She'll bring ruin. Kaelin raised a hand, and the hall fell silent. Enough. The oldest of the council, Elder Varen, stepped forward. His voice trembled with fury barely masked as reverence. Majesty, with all respect, you have defied the will of our kind. The human was a symbol, nothing more. But now she carries the moon's power. She will destroy us. She saved one of ours, Kaelin said coldly. She saved me. She bewitched you. Varen spat. You think you control her? Look at your arm. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. He glanced down and saw it. Faint, like a ghost, a silver thread traced along his wrist. The bond mark. Not false. Not ceremonial.
Real.
The council gasped. It cannot be, one of them whispered. The Luna bond was never sealed by the gods. This is true. Varen's expression twisted. Then the prophecy is fulfilled. The Alpha King and the half-born are bound in blood. One must die for balance to hold. Alara felt the air thicken. She stepped forward, ignoring Kaelin's hand that shot out to stop her. You think killing me will save you? She said, her voice steady. You think your fear of me will end the curse that already lives in your blood? Varen's lip curled. You speak as though you know our curse, girl.
I feel it, she said.
Every night when the moon rises. Every time you look at me and see the end of what you built. The moon doesn't punish me. It punishes you. The elder lunged forward, but Kaelin's growl froze him mid-step. The sound was primal, the kind that shook the bones of every wolf in the room. No one touches her. She's not one of us. She's mine. The words fell like thunder. Every head bowed instinctively. Kaelin took Alara's hand, his golden eyes blazing. You will not harm her. Not while I breathe. Varen's eyes flickered with something darker than rage, resolve. Then you have chosen your death, my king. That night, Kaelin locked the palace gates. The packs were restless, the air thick with coming violence. He sat in his chamber, staring into the fire, a glass of blood wine untouched beside him. Alara approached quietly. They'll come for me, she said. I'll stop them. They'll come for you too. He looked up, eyes shadowed. Let them. She knelt beside him. Kaelin, listen to me. If the moon truly bound us, it wasn't to destroy this kingdom. There must be a reason. The moon doesn't reason, he said bitterly. It takes what it wants. Alara reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. Then maybe it wants change. He caught her hand, holding it against his chest. Change always demands blood. Her voice trembled. Whose? He didn't answer. When the bells rang near midnight, they weren't for ceremony. They were the sound of betrayal. The guards at the gate turned their weapons inward. Torches flared in the corridors. Wolves in armor advanced through the halls, their loyalty pledged to Elder Varen. Alara woke to shouting and the crash of steel. She ran to the window. The courtyard below was already a war zone. The pack was dividing before her eyes. The door burst open. Rin entered, blood on his sleeve.
Maestre.
The council's forces have breached the eastern wing. Kaelin grabbed his sword. Get her out. Alara shook her head.
No.
I stay with you. You swore no one commands you, he said, gripping her shoulders. Then command yourself to live. But she didn't move. The bond between them flared. Heat, light, pain, love, all at once. She felt his heartbeat, felt his fear. The moon rose above the storm clouds, full and merciless. The mark on her skin blazed. And in that moment, Alara understood. The prophecy had never been about saving or destroying. It was about awakening. As Kaelin turned toward the door, blades flashing and wolves roaring in the corridors beyond. Alara whispered the words that would change them both. "Kaelin," she said. He looked back once. "If blood is the price," she whispered, "then I'll pay it with you." And before he could stop her, she reached for him, her mark against his, and the world erupted in silver fire. The explosion tore through the palace like the voice of a god. Flames leapt along the rafters, devouring silk banners and polished oak. The stones of Alarion shuddered. The great wolf statues that guarded the gates cracked under the force. For one blinding heartbeat, the whole kingdom was washed in silver light, the light of the moon itself answering the bond it had created. When the glare faded, the silence that followed was thick with smoke and ash. Kaelin staggered to his knees, lungs burning, sword clattering beside him. Every muscle screamed. The hall that had been the throne room was gone. Only ruin remained. And in the center of that ruin, standing untouched amid the fire, was Alara. Her hair whipped in the wind, her eyes no longer human. They glowed, pure white, threaded with faint veins of gold. The mark on her shoulder burned brighter than the moon above. The air around her trembled with power. It smelled of storm and earth, of life and death intertwined. "Alara," his voice cracked on her name. She turned slowly toward him, her expression somewhere between wonder and terror. "I didn't mean to." The ground shook beneath them. Wolves lay scattered, some alive, some still. The rebels who had raised their blades against their king now stared at her with wide, fearful eyes. Elder Varen was among them, his robes torn, his chest heaving. "Do you see?" he cried, voice shrill with triumph and fear. "She is the curse. She brings ruin wherever she walks." Alara's hands trembled. The flames bent toward her like reeds in wind.
No.
"I was trying to stop the fighting. You've doomed us all." Kaelin rose, pain forgotten. "Enough." His voice cut through the chaos like steel. "She saved you from your own slaughter." Varen spat blood. "She saved no one. She ends us." He raised his blade, and in the same breath, Kaelin moved. The two collided, Varen's dagger flashing, Kaelin's sword answering. Metal met flesh. The sound echoed through the ruined hall. When it was over, Varen fell. Kaelin stood over him, chest heaving, the dagger buried deep in his side. Blood darkened his shirt, spreading fast. "Kaelin!" Alara ran to him, catching him before he collapsed. Her hands pressed over the wound, but the blood kept coming, hot and relentless. He caught her wrist, his breath shallow. "Don't. You're bleeding too much. Don't use it." His voice was rough, desperate. "That power, it's not meant for saving." She ignored him. "You said the moon doesn't reason. Maybe I do." The mark on her skin flared again, and light spread from her hands, wrapping around the wound. His body arched, the pain surged, then dulled. The light seeped into him, slowing the bleeding, knitting flesh to flesh. When it faded, he was breathing again, but she wasn't. "Alara?" Her head lolled against his shoulder, her pulse faint. The mark on her skin flickered weakly, as though it had burned itself out. "No," he whispered.
No, no, no.
He shook her gently, then harder. "You hear me? You don't get to leave me now." Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. Wolves gathered at the gates, their howls rising into the wind. Confusion, grief, and something else. Submission. They could sense it. The bond had completed itself. The moon had chosen its king and queen, but only one of them still breathed. By dawn, Alarion was quiet. The fires had burned out. The rebels were gone or dead, the survivors kneeling before their wounded king. Kaelin stood at the highest terrace, Alara's body in his arms, her face pale and peaceful, the faint trace of silver still lingering beneath her skin. Rin approached slowly. "Majesty," he said, voice low, "the pack awaits your word. What do we tell them?" Kaelin's gaze never left the horizon. "Tell them the moon made its choice." Rin hesitated. "And what of the council?" "There is no council anymore." Rin bowed his head and left. Kaelin turned back toward her, his thumb tracing the edge of the fading mark. "You wanted freedom," he whispered. "You said no one commands you. Not even me." He looked up at the rising sun. "Then command the gods to give you back." No answer came. Only the wind, soft and mournful. He closed his eyes and pressed his lips to her forehead. "If this is the price for peace," he murmured, "then let the world burn again." But the moon was not finished. As the first light of day touched her face, the silver mark pulsed once. Faint, but alive. Kaelin froze. The warmth beneath his fingers spread, slow but certain. Alara's chest rose.
Once. Twice.
Her eyes fluttered open. They were still bright, still otherworldly. "Kaelin," she whispered, her voice barely there. He caught her face in his hands, disbelief and relief colliding like storm and fire. "You came back." She smiled weakly. "You said not to die without your permission." He laughed, raw, unguarded, the sound of a man who had forgotten how. "You never listened. Never will." Below them, the wolves howled again, not in mourning this time, but in reverence. The moon glowed faintly above the dawn, no longer cold, no longer distant. And as the ruins of Alarion smoldered beneath its light, Kaelin Dravik and Alara stood together. King and queen, wolf and half-born, bound not by prophecy or politics, but by a bond that had defied death itself. The war was over, but the world, they both knew, was only just beginning to tremble. For the first time in centuries, Alarion slept without fear. Smoke still curled from the ruins, but the howls that filled the valley were no longer the cries of rebellion. They were the hymns of rebirth. The old banners of blood-red silk had been torn down, their ashes scattered to the winds. In their place, the wolves hung new ones, black and silver, marked by a crescent moon that shimmered faintly in the sun. And from the highest tower, the Alpha King and his Luna watched the dawn rise over their fractured kingdom. Kaelin's wounds had healed, but the ache beneath his ribs remained, the kind that no power could touch. The cost of their bond was still unknown. Sometimes, when Alara slept beside him, her pulse would fade into the same slow rhythm as the moon's light, and he would feel her life tethered to something far greater than either of them. The oracle's words haunted him still. "Without her, you die. With her, the old order burns." He hadn't understood then that both could be true. Now he ruled a realm scorched and changed. The council was gone. The elders who survived had sworn fealty to Alara or fled into exile. The packs, divided for generations, had begun to gather under a new banner, the banner of the silver moon. The world was watching. The humans, too. The fragile peace that had been prophecy's promise was now his daily war. That morning, he found Alara in the garden that had once been a courtyard of execution. The stone walls still bore faint scorch marks, but new vines crept up them, green and persistent. She knelt beside a shallow pond, her reflection rippling in the water. "You should rest," he said, stepping closer. "I'm not tired." Her voice was softer now, as if the fire that once fueled her defiance had learned gentleness. "Do you ever think it strange? The same moon that cursed this kingdom now blesses it." Kaelin's mouth curved faintly. "The moon doesn't bless. It watches, and waits to see what we do next." Alara rose, turning to him. The light caught her hair, and for a moment, she didn't look half-born or divine. She looked human, tired, alive, extraordinary. "We rebuild," she said simply. "We will," he replied. But peace is never just rebuilding walls. It's teaching wolves not to bite when they're afraid. "And humans not to run," she added. He smiled. "Then we start there." She stepped closer. "Together?" "Always." Their hands met, fingers threading. The bond between them pulsed, no longer wild and burning, but steady, calm, alive. That night, under a sky unbroken by storm, the wolves of Alarion gathered in the courtyard. The fires burned low, the air was thick with expectation. Kaelin stood before them, his cloak sweeping over the stones. Beside him, Alara wore white trimmed with silver, her mark visible and unhidden. "My people," Kalen began, his voice carrying through the night, "you once followed fear. You called it strength. You bowed to blood and forgot the cost. But no king rules forever by claw alone." He looked to Alara. "You feared her because she was different, because she reminded you that what we destroy in others, we destroy in ourselves. But this," he lifted her hand, showing the faint silver glow to the crowd, "this is not a curse. It is our salvation." Alara's voice joined his, clear, strong, human and not. "The moon chose both of us. Not to rule as gods, but to remind you what it means to change. From this night forward, no wolf will hunt man, and no human will fear the howl. We begin again under one moon." A murmur spread through the crowd, then a low, rising sound that built into a howl, deep and resonant. One voice, then dozens, then hundreds. Wolves and humans alike lifted their faces to the sky. For the first time in living memory, their voices didn't clash. They harmonized. The moon shone brighter, silver washing over stone and skin, marking a new era. Later, when the fires burned to embers and the kingdom had gone quiet, Kalen and Alara stood on the terrace overlooking the valley. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting against her hair. "Do you ever wonder," he murmured, "what we might have been if the moon had never interfered?" Alara smiled faintly. "Dead, probably." He laughed low and quiet. "You're not wrong." She turned in his arms to face him, her fingers tracing the scar at his jaw. "Would you change it if you could?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head.
No.
"The moon doesn't take what we love. It shows us what we were too blind to protect." She leaned up, brushing her lips against his. "Then let's protect this." He kissed her, slow, certain, the way storms finally fall silent after breaking the sky. Above them, the moon gleamed full and unblinking, its light spilling over a kingdom reborn. And though prophecy had started their story, it was their choice, their defiance, their love, that would end it. In the years that followed, the bards would call it the reign of the silver moon. They would speak of the Alpha King who defied destiny and the half-born Luna who carried the blood of both worlds. But in truth, it was simpler than that. It was a story of two souls who met in the ruins of power and built something gentler from its ashes. And whenever the moon rose high over Alarion, the wolves still lifted their voices in song, not in mourning, not in war, but in reverence for the night their world began anew. And so, beneath the watchful glow of the silver moon, the Alpha King and the half-born Luna rewrote their fate. What began in deception became devotion. What began in prophecy became peace. Their story ends here, but the shadows of this world still whisper. Kings still bleed, gods still hunger, and love still burns in places it should not exist. If you felt the pull of their bond, the danger, the tenderness, the fire, then stay with us. Subscribe for more dark fantasy love stories where power meets passion and even fate learns to kneel.